You won't make it. You can't dream big. You failed before. Just shut on life, man. You ugly anyway.
Nah. Welcome back to the Commoner Elitist, and I have a topic today called the void. And normally on topics, I could speak to something that's a little more concrete, but the void or our voids are individual, right? The void that I have in my life, the void that your brother has or that you have is different. Some people, I should say very few people, are voidless. Most people have some sort of emptiness or void that they either ignore or that it plays into their everyday struggles or triumphs. Voids aren't always causing negative issues, right? Some of the greatest men and women on earth have had a void that they attempted to fulfill. As a matter of fact, a lot of passions that we have stem from voids, stem from things that say we love or things that we never got an opportunity to love. So that's that. So this topic today is about the type of voids we have, and not to get quote unquote sucked into those voids. When you think of a black hole, you think of something in space that pretty much sucks, dismantles, destroys everything it comes into contact with. I had spoken before about creation, sustainment, and destruction. And the black hole, or the void, is really, in its essence, destructive. Now, have many people had an opportunity to create something from that type of void they have? Yes, as I stated in the beginning, but ultimately they're triumphing over something that is dark, right? It's not something that is. So you can have the same creativeness, or you can have the same triumphs without having a void to be your propeller. I should say that. So today's topic, I'm going to kind of discuss the type of voids that many of us have and why we have them, so that you can pinpoint yourself if this is you, or if this is someone you love, or if this is something that pertains to you and how you can maneuver your way out of it. So the first type of void that I wanted to discuss is the missing elements from childhood. So, what type of void could that potentially be? How could we have a void from missing elements from childhood? Well, the mind of just a normal person, yourself included, loves homeostasis. We know inherently when things are right or wrong. We know inherently when something about our life, rather it's the way we're raised, rather it's the environment, it will cause us stress. So when there's missing elements from your childhood that you never got an opportunity to experience, you may not know what it is, even as a child, and as an adult you might black it out, but that void, it stays. This is why you find many men and women, as they get older, they regress. They regress back to teenagehood. They regress back to childhood in relationships, or at the jobs or just in life in general because they had a void there, was something missing. So the missing elements from childhood could be anywhere from, the strongest ones are parenting, right? The parenting, whereas like if your father was never in your life or not so much in your life, then that masculine energy, there's a vacuum there. And you can fulfill it with your own empowerment. You can fulfill it with, placing other individuals in that position. But as a human being, that void is natural when you're missing a parent. Now, your dad or your mother can be literally in your life and they're still missing. Maybe dad's a truck driver, maybe mom's a nurse, and they're working a lot. Now, as an adult, one of the things you have to do is forgive them for things that they don't know. Forgive them for mistakes that they made as they grew up, right? So we can't really focus on that, but we just know that it does cause voids that we have to deal with. So missing elements from childhood could be parents. That's the primarily one, but a lot of times it's your environment. Does your environment allow you to grow and prosper? Were you in a city or a school system that really saw what you could do? Maybe to this day you could see one word, spell it one time, and then you'll never forget how that word is spelled. Maybe you can recognize, maybe math is just your thing where you can figure things out that people spend years on, and it just takes you a few minutes, maybe a few days, if you really wanted to. But these are things that may have not been known by you or by people around you, because maybe the school system, maybe your parents, maybe your relatives just didn't see it, and that created a void in you, because all the while you've had this gift that no one knew about. And as you got older, you start getting into talents and habits. Maybe you kind of go backwards and say, well, people saying, well, you love art now, but you've always been an artist. You love painting. Well, you were painting when you were a kid, but no one gave you the paintbrush. You had to wait until you got older. So those voids a lot of times aren't what people are purposely doing. It's just that there's unfulfilled areas in our lives, right? That's a missing element from childhood. Maybe you didn't get to see your grandparents a lot. Maybe you didn't have a lot of money and resources, so you were stagnant in areas. These voids from childhood don't heal themselves. Now, over time, they become quieter. They scream less, right? But they're always there. It just takes that one trigger. Maybe you didn't have a lot of clothes growing up, and someone just says, hey man, let me borrow your hat. They don't ask you, right? They just take your hat, and then you go berserk. And they say, well man, dude, it's just a hat. But to you, it means something else totally different. Maybe you got whooped too harsh when you were younger, so you don't whoop your kids at all. You're doing the opposite, but it's a void there because for some reason you feel like you weren't protected. Many people feel that way in childhood. So these voids from childhood, again, they whisper. They don't go anywhere. And it's best to deal with them once you recognize them, but we'll get to the interview to talk about that. Another piece is dreams unfulfilled. That goes back to perhaps you wanted to be a doctor, and life happened. You couldn't finish school, couldn't afford it. Or you didn't have the resources. Or maybe, just maybe, you didn't have the focus and attention. Maybe you had a child. Maybe you were in a relationship, so The man said, "Nah, you can't be doing that right now. We need to do something else." So these dreams unfulfilled a lot of times leave voids because you always ask this particular question: what if? There's something about living life and I guess living through life, I should say. And it's a what if, right? What if I made a different choice? What if I did this and did that? And normally the what ifs are only when there's a unhappiness there. There's an unfulfillment there. But dreams of being whatever you want it to be. Maybe it wasn't an occupation at all. Maybe it wasn't a type of job. Maybe it was you just want to travel the world. Maybe you want to see that one place, Italy. Because as a little girl, you had this magazine, you saw these beautiful structures, and you said, I'm going to do that by 26. And at 28, you have 2 kids working 16 hours a day. That creates a void. And you shouldn't be ashamed of that. Because when things are placed on your heart, as I stated before, it's there for a reason. No matter how big it seems to other individuals, no matter how unreasonable it sounds to other individuals, they're not you. So dreams unfulfilled are not fantastical. They are not things that you wanted to avoid. Those are things you want to deal with. They will cause a void, and those voids don't necessarily scream, they whisper. So failed relationships. Failed relationships is another void that happens, right? Because a lot of times when we get in relationships, whether friendships, romantic relationships, we have an idea of where it's going. When you're youthful, you don't really think about that, right? So you don't really think about it. But as you get older, part of the what ifs happen, right? What if I said no instead of yes? What if I did what I said I was going to do the first time? So failed relationships, even friendships, right? They place voids in us a lot of times because we figure out as we grow, even some of the mistakes we made in order to help or hinder that relationship. See, previously, your mind had created a whole movie on why it happened. You were justifiably right. But as you get more and more data, more and more information, more and more relationships, you say, wait, I keep seeing the same pattern. And I told you about those patterns of destruction, right? My other video. So you start seeing these patterns of destruction, you have to start thinking, okay, right, wait. So as long as you're innocent in the matter, it doesn't create a void. At least not a deep void. But the moment that you say, you know what, she left because of me, then it's man, failed relationships. Failed relationships is another missing element in your life, and you have to understand why it failed. And if you came to terms with it failed or it didn't work out years ago, the void is there because, one, probably don't think you can do better. That's truthfully, right? Because you wouldn't be worried about it. But also, perhaps you feel like it was your fault. Right? I could do better, then I ain't worried about it. It's my fault. It's my fault though. So failed relationships can create a void in your life, rather it was when you were, a teenager in your first love, all the way up to in your 20s and 30s, just meeting a person that you spent the weekend with and nothing ever happened. Those things can create voids. And it's better to, if you can't heal them, is to accept them, that was yesterday and you have tomorrow. Another piece I wanted to talk about when it comes to the void is non-forgiveness of mistakes. Just like I mentioned in the relationships, that you figured out, you got a revelation, it's my mistake, I did it. When you don't forgive yourself of mistakes that you made when you were 20, mistakes that you made when you were 14, mistakes that you made when you was 40, if you're 60 now, mistakes you made when you're 35. If you don't forgive yourself, you create a vacuum. And that vacuum will always suck the energy out of the future. It's the past, as I stated, being a vacuum, sucking the progress out of the future. And it doesn't even exist anymore. Could you have made a different choice? Absolutely. You got to live with that. There's not a human being walking around today that will not say that same thing. But the good news is, a lot of times things aren't meant for you. You think it would have made you a better life. He would have made you a better husband. Or she would have made you a better wife. Or that college would have made you do better financially. Or perhaps, making these type of changes would have made your life better off. And you're probably right. Your suspicions are probably correct. However, bad decisions keep us from making future bad decisions for the most part. So say, for example, you made the great decision and you would have been living a better life now. You still would have eventually made this mistake. What if you would have got with that guy who's now a doctor or surgeon? What if you got with him? When you got with him, could you truly appreciate him? What if you would have just went into business for yourself at 20 instead of waiting until you're 47? Would you have the passion, drive, and maturity to do it? Probably not. Unfortunately, our mistakes hurt. They create voids because we think about them and we regret, because regret is the void. But if we look at it and reverse it and just say, look, that was then, now is now, and I had to go through that. Always place in your life the fact that you had to go through it. And you say, well, that's not cool because I could just do a bunch of bad stuff and be like, I had to go through it.
You should know the difference.
It is a bit of a mental jump. But I'm saying when it comes to the voids that you had in the past, if I did it in the past, I can't change it. I'm accepted. I had to experience it. I apparently wanted to experience it on one level or another level. Now I have a clear state. I move on. Now I want to make sure that I don't get myself in another situation that I have to regret and forgive. So the past, you weren't mature enough to get to where you are now listening to this video in order to say, I can't change the past, so I might as well forgive and move on. Now you're mature enough to say, I'm not even going to create a situation that I have to regret. It's just growth. The last thing is the most insidious. It's the most insidious void we have. Missing elements from childhood, right? We could deal with that. We could think back to what was missing. Dreams unfulfilled. You want to be an astronaut, or you want to be, a lieutenant, or You wanted to be a professor at Yale. Failed relationships, you let her go. Now you're in the C plan. Non-forgiveness of mistakes, you're still holding yourself accountable, but you have regrets. Shouldas, wouldas, couldas. But this last point is listening to that hidden voice. I mentioned the whisper. See, the missing elements from childhood all the way down through the non-forgiveness of mistakes. The void doesn't scream, it whispers. So that whispering voice is what causes you to live in the past. So as you go through your daily life now, you have to listen for that void and listen to what it is saying to you. Because a lot of times it just whispers and we have action. It says, hey, he doesn't love you. And we say, he doesn't love me. The voice whispers to you, hey, it's not going to work out. It never does. And you take it for what it is. It ain't going to work out. It ain't never worked out. It whispers to you, you was broke. You will always be broke. Right? So you say, well, I'm going to always be broke. It's keeping you in the same energy that you've always been. So if you listen to that hidden voice, who's just the representation of the void, but you don't have to do what it states. You don't have to believe what it's saying, because ultimately that's the old you that it's dealing with. Avoid the void by listening and recognizing that hidden voice, but doing what matters today, not the mistakes and regrets of yesterday.